just listen to that. Can we do 15 minutes of nothing but listening to Clutch? I'd be okay. I'd totally be fine with that. Damn, I love that new record, man. It is good. I've had a lot of people that are kind of back and forth on it, too.
Oh, that's crazy to me.
Yeah, I know. Actually, it is to me as well. But a lot of people feel like it's forced. It's not the same. It's like they're forcing their way back into what they used to do. And blah, 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 blah,
See,
blah,
it
blah.
felt completely the opposite to me.
I do, too.
It felt so natural.
And seeing it live, it just flows, man. It totally flows. That's actually what was really beautiful about it.
Maybe I will go see Guns N' Roses in concert.
Dude, you can leave early. You can totally leave early. That's what I was thinking, too. I'm like, well, I don't have to stay for Guns N' Roses.
I mean, they're going to be late to the stage for a couple hours anyway.
Kidding, right?
So.
They're not going to play till 2 in the morning.
Don't you think it'd be funnier if you could figure out a way to get everybody to bail before Guns N' Roses gets on stage?
That would be hilarious. You know that at least 2/3 of that crowd are like, later.
Yeah, totally.
They're walking out.
But the problem is that most people are like, I want to see how fat he is.
That's true.
How fat's Axl?
That's true. And they'll leave during the first 2 songs.
Yeah.
Once he tries to do Welcome to the Jungle, and it's like, so it's over. It'll be over. We're talking about the River City Rock Fest, actually, which is going to be happening in San Antonio in a few weeks, and Clutch is on that bill.
Which is great. I'd like to see them getting out there in front of other audiences because they should be huge rock stars by now. You know what I mean?
They're on that level. They're getting to that point now, man. They're almost an A level. I say they're close to being B plus.
Is that right,
dude? I mean, it didn't seem like it at South by Southwest, but I think a lot of people were scared away because they didn't think they were going to get in when I saw their big performance. But I mean, you're talking about a band now who has got some great albums behind them, and they had the love of the Jackass dudes. So the Bam Margera's of the world. So that got there. Then they wound up on the soundtrack for Walking Dead.
Right.
Then they wound up in commercials for CSI Miami or whatever.
Thank goodness, because, for years I was like, man, I always wanted to see Clutch sustain, but I was never sure how they would do it. You know what I mean? How would they be able to bring in the income? They can only play 500, 600 person theaters for so long, you know what I mean?
Well, I saw them open up for some really big acts over the year. I mean, I saw them open up. The first time I think I saw them was when they opened up for White Zombie way back when at the Austin Music Hall. It was kind of an odd pairing, but it was just such a great show, and they're just such an impressive band, man.
Yeah.
I like the fact that they can still play small venues and pull it off. Because one of the best shows I've ever seen them do was when they did the 2 final nights of Emos back in the day. And they did the big show at the new Emos one night with 1,500 people there. And then they did the small show with a sold-out crowd of 300 people. And it was incredible. It blew me away.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so good. So they can I think they can command both sides of it.
But now they can. For the longest time, it seemed like that would never happen for them. They were never going to have that big breakaway hit, but then it turned out that they did in a way with Mob Goes Wild and what's the microphone song? Pass that mic.
No, Careful with That Mic.
Careful with that mic,
that song? That's the breakaway song you think for them?
Well, I mean, if you were to look on Spotify, those are the 2 songs that get the most play.
I guess so.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is that those people who know Clutch, it's it's kind of those songs, but meanwhile, I mean, Earth Rocker, to me, I mean that should be a monster hit. That should be every time you go to a hockey game, they should be playing that song as the team skates out onto the ice, that sort of stuff.
Well, Earth Rocker is definitely not my favorite song on that album. It's not that good. It's a decent song, but that song needs to be played live, right? Because it's all about if you're going to do it on stage, and that's the whole essence of that thing. But the really big one here, actually, this is Mob Goes Wild. Hang on, I want to the one that got them big. I hate to stop that, but I got to bring this other one up because this is the one that really got them going.
Right? Yes, I forgot about this one. Yeah.
This is the one that really got them going.
Yeah.
Because this was,
right.
A couple of soundtracks and some other stuff. When they started to get big, this is the one that really bit big. And it's it's on the bluesy stuff, man.
Yeah. Which made me worried that they would never go back to doing what they did.
and you made me wrong.
When you caused me to leave, child, my happy home. But someday, baby, you ain't worry my life anymore.
It's great.
Yeah.
And it's barely metal.
Well, that's the thing, is that it's honestly, it's not, they've never been a metal band.
Well,
They've never been a metal band. I don't care what anybody says, and they've never been a metal band.
They've been a metal band.
But the thing about it is that they're heavy enough that they don't fit into mainstream, and they're soft enough that they don't quite make it into metal. They're not quite hard rock, and they're obscure enough and bluesy enough that they just don't fit anywhere. That's why I play the piss out of them on my show, because they deserve some air, and not enough people do it. And they're such an interesting band because they've been able to do what a lot of other bands just can't seem to pull off. They start and do rock music, then they kind of fade into some other kind of nebulous, weird stuff like Space Grass and stuff like that in their early careers.
Love that.
Then they do, pro rock and Elephant Riders and all these other things with pieces and elements of it. And then they go into that phase where they did the really bluesy CDs, From Beale Street to Oblivion. And what's the other one? I can't think of. Damn it. Strange Cousins from the West. That's one I can never think of. And they got a lot more bluesy. And then now with the new Earth Rocker album, it's definitely kind of a throwback. It's like it's where they stopped in 2006 after Robot Hive Exodus. And that album, had pieces of where they were going. But it's interesting to see a band that can ride the lines, do different things with their sound, and still be appreciated by their fans and by new audiences alike. You don't get that very often with anybody else.
Right, and I'm thinking, part of the reason I wanted to talk about the new Clutch is the fact that they have made that transition between, doing something that had a very particular sound, segueing almost out of it. I mean, it seemed like a rather natural, but still felt a little abrupt by the time they put out, was it Beale Street?
From Beale Street to Oblivion.
Yeah, by the time that happened, it still felt kind of abrupt when they did that. And yet, fans stuck with them. And, and they got an even bigger audience and odder audience. And then now they're back to doing their thing again. And it's kind of interesting because I don't think there's very many, if we're talking about metal bands in general, or specifically, I guess you'd say, just not something that those bands do very often. And once again, Clutch setting the precedent,
and it's not something you want them to do. I mean, you think about it, and think about how many times you complain that this band was great until they did this,
right,
or until they did that. And as soon as they changed their sound, if AC/DC wrote a punk rock song instead of the one song that they already have, then you would go, what is this crap?
Right.
And it would be something that you wouldn't want. Or if Slayer, when we were talking about Slayer doing their punk rock
cover album,
that was just the wrong thing to do. It was just a really bad idea.
Yeah.
And nobody took to that. It was something that they wanted to try, and they did it, and I'm glad they ignore it.
As a Slayer fan, it's interesting because it's like, you forget how much punk was involved in Slayer sound, or even still is involved in Slayer sound, until they did that record, and then you go, oh my goodness, that doesn't sound that different from Slayer. Now I can see where the influences were. But
it's not about influences, it's about the way you sound at this point. I'm just trying to think of other bands that have tried to venture into other weird areas that have been very unsuccessful.
Melvins?
Melvins they're really eclectic, though.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, and that's their thing.
Yeah.
So you can't lump them into anything.
Right.
That's the one thing about the Melvins, is that I love them, but you just can't pigeonhole those guys.
Right.
No matter what they do.
It's not like Between the Buried and Me putting out like a total Cannibal Corpse sounding record.
Actually, Between the Buried and Me is a pretty good example because they've sort of drifted in and out of different things over the years and have been pretty successful with it. I mean, the fact that they're opening up for Coheed and Cambria on the last tour versus doing a death metal tour or Summer Slaughter or something like that, that's kind of a venture for them from where they were at 6 years ago.
Right.
6-8 years ago, they could have opened for Cannibal Corpse and it probably would have been okay.
Yeah.
So, all right, this is the slow song off the new record. This is the one slow song in the middle of the new record, and this is ripe for a soundtrack right here. And they played this one live, both sets. So this is like one of the ones that they're going to be pushing at some point.
They like it.
And I dig it, too.
Swan boats and daisy chains. Can't seem to recall my true given name. I see my footprints, how they come, how they go.
What a credit to these guys that, you know, when they sit back in their rehearsal room and they're like, what are we going to do next? It's like they just, it always sounded to me like they just start jamming and whatever comes out they're comfortable with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And instead of like going, well, geez, I don't know, you know, doesn't sound enough like our last album, or doesn't sound enough like, I wonder what our fans are going to think.
They just write tunes.
Yeah, and that makes me feel that much better about Earth Rocker, because it's like, you know what, this is what these guys want to do right now, and you can feel that in the song. That's why I think the accusation that the album sounds forced is completely fraudulent, because at no point in Clutch's 20-odd-year history
has nothing's
they ever
been forced.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And at this point in their careers, they really don't have to do anything that they don't want to do.
And if you go back and you listen to the albums, like, because I'm a huge fan. I mean, I'm a huge fan from day one with these guys. If you go back and you listen to all the albums in succession, it really doesn't. Even the ones that people say are oddballs, where they went more bluesy, or the two we mentioned, Strange Cousins, and they're not that odd. They really aren't. They still have elements of that old rock band, 50,000 Unstoppable Watts, Electric Worry, like those songs in there. They've got those pieces. When you go back to the old records, they've got the pieces of the blues records that came after them, except they're smaller pieces. Then they grew to full albums with pieces of the old stuff, and it just varied how much they were writing at that point. And it's kind of interesting to be able to see a band pull that off and keep their fan base and not piss anybody off.
You know what's interesting? I'm thinking about another one of my favorite bands of all time, beginning with letter C, Carcass, right?
Okay, yeah.
A lot of their progression as they sometimes happened because new guitarists, new, creativity, new different musicians coming in and out of the band. With Clutch, I mean, these guys are fatter than they were 20 years ago, and grayer, certainly, but it's still the same four dudes.
Actually, John Paul Gaster's lost a little weight. He's looking good.
Is he looking good?
He's actually looking really good.
Okay, I'm thinking about what they looked like when I saw them at ACL. But
No. They look a lot better than that.
Okay, good.
He's lost a little bit of weight.
Thank
actually.
goodness.
They're looking good. They were rocking it out, man, during South by.
I still think Clutch are one of those bands that, like, the first time I saw them with Milwaukee Metal Fest, 1990, I think it was, with Transnational Speedway. And I remember going to see them, and they look a complete anomaly, because they're in between Cancer and Baphomet and all these bands. But you watch them and you're like, wow, these guys have got something really cool and unique going on that is going to last forever.
But when you look at bands that have changed, I think metalheads are a little gun shy when it comes to stuff like that, because metal bands that change, Carcass is a good example. When they came out with Heartwork, a lot of their fans just ditched them. It was good, great record. One of the best records in metal history, but it was completely different than what they had done before.
Yes.
Metallica, when they came out with the Black Album, same sort of thing. Everybody's like, what is this crap?
Well, abandoning them at that point was a good idea. But yes.
but you know what I'm saying? It's the same sort of idea. They take a different tack, and next thing you know, they lose a lot of people that were on their side. And Clutch is just one of those bands that have been able to supersede any of that stuff, because they didn't have a whole lot of fans to begin with.
Right.
So when it's a slow burn for those guys over 20 years. It's interesting to watch and see how tolerant they are and who they can play for. When I see them open up for Opeth and I see them open up for Zakk Wylde, it's just amazing, because all those crowds love them. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who it is. If it's a death metal crowd or if it's a rock and roll crowd, it doesn't matter. They all love them.
And it's Clutch are one of those bands that, like, I almost, if you're a musician and you want to, like, try to emulate somebody's career, Clutch is an awesome career to try to emulate, but be careful, because it can go very, very badly. They're a rarity for a reason.
So we just spent 15 minutes sucking the D of Clutch here, so we need to end the show. Hey guys, you guys are the best band ever. Remember the time you played that one show? Oh, that was so cool. It was really cool when you played that show. The new record's good. Hey man, what's your favorite color? It's so cool. You guys are awesome.
Remember that?
I love you.
You remember that song?
That one song that was totally playing when I wrecked my car that one time. Yeah, it was very good. It's so cool. All right, we got to wrap this show up, dude. All right. That does it for Visions from the Dark Side this week.
Another great one.
Another great one in the books.
Man, raising the bar. I don't know how anybody else can compete.
Oh, sorry. I was just choking on that last statement, I think. That's what that was. Every Sunday night from 10 p.m. to 11 p.m., that's where you're going to find this damn show on No Control Radio HD2. Or, of course, you can podcast it on Monday mornings. We're going to be having some cool stuff that's coming down the pipe with Dudley and Bobland. We'll see. We'll have some extra content and other things where we can drop F-bombs and stuff. Oh, what a great idea. Actually, we don't need to drop no F-bombs, man. We ain't serious. We don't need all that stuff. We do just fine the way we are. Damn it. But until next week, I want you to log on to visionsfromthedarkside.com and tell us some other things that you want to hear us talk about. Give us some other topics, and you can make sure to comment on what we say here, because we are just a couple of douchebags talking about metal, and we need your input, man. I am Chiggedy Chuck.
And I'm Godless.
And this has been Visions from the Darkside.